Now available in paperback and Kindle, All About Marilyn. Learn all about the struggles of a faded former teen sitcom star in this absolutely fabulous 5-star screenplay. Get All About Marilyn in paperback and Kindle on Amazon.com today.
Hollywood Historical Men in Crisis. One of my viewers wanted me to do another installment in the Hollywood Historical Men in Crisis series. And for this installment in the Hollywood Historical Men in Crisis series, I'm going to be talking about child actor Dustin Diamond, who played the nerdy teen Screech Powers on the NBC teen sitcom Saved by the Bell. Now, Dustin Diamond is known for playing Samuel Screech Powers on the NBC teen morning sitcom Saved by the Bell. And while Dustin Diamond is well known for his signature role of playing the socially awkward nerd on Saved by the Bell, unfortunately he was extremely awkward as related to trying to navigate a course for life as related to his adult career, and this is one of the things that led to him winding up becoming a man in crisis. Now, Dustin Diamond really started on the road to becoming a man in crisis way back when he was a boy at 10 years old. Now, at 10 years old, Dustin Diamond's parents took him on the road to becoming a child star, and as they took him on the road to becoming a child star back in 1987, it looked like his career was going to be somewhat promising because he was starting to pull a lot of gigs early on that a rookie performer gets, such as a film, The Price of Life, where he got a small role, a voiceover role in Yogi's Great Escape, another guest spot in It's a Living, and even got to have a small role in the big movie Big Top Pee-wee back in the 80s, because Pee-wee Herman was huge back then, and just being in that movie would really make a major mark on your career. But all of these small roles that he got, such as Purple People Eater, all of these roles basically were small compared to what was the first of his big breaks, which was the Disney teen sitcom Good Morning Miss Bliss. Now, Good Morning Miss Bliss starred former child star Haley Mills as Miss Bliss, the teacher of a class of students that included Zach Morris and Samuel Screech Powers. And this show, which was set in a junior high school, I believe, only ran 13 episodes, but this show basically was the big break that Dustin Diamond received in his career, because this show would basically be the show that, again, introduced his signature role of Samuel Screech Powers. But once this show ended after one season and 13 episodes, NBC then decided to pick the show up and retool it, and it was picked up and retooled and named Saved by the Bell. Now, Saved by the Bell was a retooled and revamped Miss Bliss without Haley Mills, but it featured a new cast of characters that were on this show, which revolved around teen star Mark Paul Gosselaar, who advocated to get Dustin Diamond to be on the show and see him as somewhat of a nerdy tag-along. Now, as Mark Paul Gosselaar advocated to get him on the show, Dustin Diamond was out here doing other projects. He did make an appearance in the Tony Danza 1989 movie, She's Out of Control, which was a kind of mid-teen movie out of the dying teen movie craze. And he was also made an appearance as Screech in the TV movie Who Shrunk Saturday Morning, and also made an appearance on The Wonder Years, American Playhouse, and Star Trek The Next Generation as they set up Saved by the Bell to come out in the fall of 1989 for NBC's changing schedule, because NBC at the time, while it had dominated Saturday morning cartoons for a good 4 to 5 years, they were looking to try to change the direction of the network, And as they were looking to change the direction of the network, they were looking to introduce more live action fare. And what they wanted to do with Saved by the Bell was create a teen sitcom that they hoped to be able to sell later on in syndication. That was the ultimate goal for Saved by the Bell, because with many of the Saturday morning cartoons, they were basically usually one and done, and they had occasional shows that were hits like Alvin and the Chipmunks and many other shows like Gummy Bears that did fairly okay. But Disney was getting ready to do some syndication with the Disney Channel, or the Disney, starting out with the Disney Afternoon. And again, they were looking to move on, and NBC was looking to create a series of low-budget sitcoms that they could go out here and make for a small budget with no-name cast, and then be able to sell those shows in syndication later on and hope to reap profits from these shows. And that's the reason why they made the Saved by the Bell show, which featured Dustin Diamond as the nerdy character Screech Powers. The nerdy character Screech Powers, who basically hung out with very popular teenagers like Zach Morris, who was the handsome hunk, A.C. Slater, who was the jock, Jessie Spano, who was the smart girl, and Kelly Kapowski, who was the popular girl, and Lisa Turtle, who was played by Lark Voorhees, who was the token black character. Now, Samuel Screech Powers, the nerdy guy, was basically chasing Lisa all the time, and Lisa kept rejecting him, and basically rejected him because he was a nerd, and that was a major part of the show Saved by the Bell, and a major part of one of the popular storylines on Saved by the Bell. Now, Saved by the Bell went on from 1989 to 1992 on NBC, as it was transitioning from animated Saturday morning cartoons to these low-budget teen sitcoms. And as NBC started to build its TNBC block in the 90s, the cast of the show Saved by the Bell, which was at Bayside High, eventually wound up graduating in 1992 and then they wound up going to college, and that's where Dustin Diamond thought he was going to be able to go on with this whole program, because they spun it off into a primetime show which featured Zach, Slater, and Screech, called Saved by the Bell, the college years. But that show struggled in 1993, and it struggled because basically the people who were watching TNBC, the kids who were watching TNBC, were not really watching Saved by the Bell in prime time. And as they tried to get the show back on track, what happened was they tried to add Kelly Kapowski onto the show to try to give Zach Morris a girlfriend, but the show just never really took off, and the show basically wound up getting canceled after 19 episodes, and it was basically a footnote in the whole Saved by the Bell franchise, which basically wound up ending in 1994 with the Saved by the Bell wedding in Las Vegas. That was basically the last time the entire original cast of Saved by the Bell were together. But as Dustin Diamond continued with his career, he continued to keep on playing the role of Screech, and wound up playing the role of Screech in a new Saved by the Bell series after winding up making 2 appearances in a 98 Degrees video and Attack of the Killer Bee movies. He wound up playing the role of Screech again in Saved by the Bell, The New Class, and played that role in Saved by the Bell, The New Class from 1994 to 2000. And after playing that role, he went on to play roles in Hang Time as Screech again in 2 episodes. But the problem with Dustin Diamond was that he really didn't have any sort of understanding on how to navigate a career outside of these sitcoms. And he had a real problem, because what happened with him is because of the dysfunctional way his parents really raised him as a child star. He was mainly focused on looking to try to please people as a child, but really wasn't focused on developing essential things like male life skills or male survival skills, and because Dustin didn't develop male life skills or male survival skills, he wasn't able to start setting a course for himself as an adult and basically looked to coast on the role of playing Screech Powers. Unfortunately, as he was looking to coast on playing the role of Screech Powers, he didn't understand that playing the role of Screech Powers was leading to him being typecast, and even worse, was impeding his acting. It really was impeding his acting because playing the same character for too long, what'll happen to a person who is an actor or an actress is if you play the same character too long, what will happen is that character's mannerisms, will become a part of your own. Now, this is what happened to actor Jaleel White when he played Steve Urkel for so many seasons on the ABC and CBS sitcom Family Matters. He played Urkel so much that he basically wound up playing the same mannerisms in his own real life, and it wound up making it where he was typecast and made it where he couldn't really play other roles and transition into another role as related to a character. And sadly, since Dustin Diamond didn't have anybody there to give him guidance on how to navigate his career, like the same way Gary Coleman didn't have anybody to give him guidance on how to navigate his career, he wound up again being awkward in Hollywood as related to working off the camera. And as he was awkward not working off the camera, he had a hard time being able to develop the contacts and develop the networking skills to be able to find those kinds of roles that would allow people to see his range and allow him to develop his skills. Now, in contrast, actor Mark Paul Gosselaar started to realize that he was getting typecast as Zach Morris on Saved by the Bell, and what Mark Paul Gosselaar did to break out of that role was what he did was start starring in soap operas like Hyperion Bay to show that he had a stronger acting range and show that he had some skills, and that helped him to be able to start breaking out of the Zach Morris role. He also did TV movies, but Dustin Diamond really didn't have that ability to network to try to get those roles in the low-budget indie movies or the low-budget indie projects. This is where an actor usually winds up breaking away from characters that they got typecast in, because this is what happened with actress Hilary Swank, who was on the teen sitcom Camp Wilder and was also in the next Karate Kid. What she did was take a low-budget movie as related to it being an indie movie, and her taking that movie basically led to her getting on the road to becoming an A-list Oscar-winning actress. And Dustin Diamond didn't know how to do this, and basically because he didn't know how to do this, he couldn't really break out of the Screech character. Moreover, Dustin Diamond had a very unique look as Screech, and he didn't really know how to do things like change his hairstyle or change the way he dressed to be able to get out of that character. And this also was a part of the awkwardness that basically kept him from being able to transition to another role, the same way his co-star Mark Paul Gosselaar did, and the same way his other co-star Mario Lopez was able to do. I mean, Mario Lopez was able to adapt by going from being an actor to going to being an entertainment reporter, and was able to break out of that role of AC Slater by showing his skills as an entertainment reporter. But both of those men basically had male life skills and male survival skills and learned how to adapt. Unfortunately, when it came to Dustin Diamond, he had a hard time learning how to adapt and just wound up playing different variations of his Screech Powers character in multiple projects, and that basically wound up leading to him basically winding up in a career where he was just playing variations of Screech in different projects, like he did with Dickie Roberts, Pauly Shore is Dead, an appearance in Off Center, basically Porn Dogs, The Adventures of Sadie, and Big Money Rustlers, and Minor League Football Story, Little Creeps, and All Wifed Out. I mean, he was basically playing the same character in whatever roles he would get. and again, really not really growing as an actor or developing his skills. And this is what led to him winding up becoming extremely frustrated as related to the state of his career. And this was actually, again, made worse by the situation as related to his parents, who wound up spending a lot of the money that he made as a child star. And what happened with that money, basically nobody knows. But the whole thing is that Dustin Diamond really, again, he didn't have anybody there to really advocate or be an agent for him or ever look out for him and teach him the essential male life skills and male survival skills that he would need to be able to navigate life. And he was really frustrated because he never really got that childhood that he really wanted to have, because he was a performer who had to be under a lot of pressure and feared that basically if he didn't do his job, he would be replaced. And again, that pressure basically put him in a road where he was just constantly had this pressure to work. And as the acting role started to dry up, what happened was with Dustin Diamond, because he didn't know how to adapt to the entertainment industry and adapt to try to find those small budget indie films, what happened was he didn't get the small budget indie films that would allow him to show his range. And as a result, what happened to Dustin Diamond is he wound up struggling in Hollywood, wound up struggling even though he was getting these bit roles and guest parts. He really wasn't breaking out to a major role. And as a result of this, he started to transition from being in acting roles to winding up on reality TV shows. And as he transitioned to being in reality TV shows, this is where Dustin Diamond's career started to go into a state of decline. And as he went into this career, went into a state of decline, he started appearing on shows like Celebrity Fit Club in an effort to lose weight. Also appeared in Celebrity Boxing, where he wound up squaring off against other teen actor Ron Pielio, who's also known as Horshack on Welcome Back, Kotter, and also was again out here in making different appearances. And again, his career was in a state of decline and never really got back to that peak level where he was when he was making appearances on Saved by the Bell in the 80s. Now, as Dustin Diamond went on with his career, he then also, in a desperate attempt to start getting attention, started doing things like he was filed for bankruptcy in 2001. And again, he was looking to go out here and sell T-shirts to try to save off the foreclosure of his house, and did that because again his career was in a state of decline because he had been again typecast in so many roles and was just struggling to just try to get his life together as related to his career. And basically, as his parents had mismanaged his career, they had wound up messing up his money and made massive tax miscalculations. So he was basically, his money was all messed up because he wasn't managing his money as an adult, and he didn't know how to manage his money as an adult. This is very similar to what happened to Gary Coleman, and after he wound up with these fiscal issues, this is where he wound up having to again do those reality shows. And again, those reality shows don't really pay a lot of money. It's just basically you just paying for rent. And as his career basically went into this whole state of decline, he was basically struggling in his life, again struggling as related to numerous personal issues, in his life, and trying to deal with issues as related to his business and personal relationships. And as he tried to struggle with these business and personal relationships, I mean, he was just out here just barely holding on, and again wound up trying to do different types of work, trying to get himself together, but never really things came together as related to his career. And it really just never really came together. Now, he would try to go and do different projects, and after everything wound up falling apart with the reality programs, he then got so desperate around 2006 after the bankruptcy and barely being able to hold on to his home that he wound up doing a sex tape called Saved by the Smell, hoping that the sex tape would be able to revive interest in him and get people's attention, hoping that he would become as popular as Paris Hilton and Kim Kardashian, But that whole approach to life basically was one from a beta male standpoint. I mean, only a beta male would sit there and believe that going out and participating in a sex tape would elevate his career, because the only people who get attention from sex tapes are women. Most people don't really care about a man being in a sex tape. Now, Dustin Diamond later on wanted to say that, well, he wasn't in a sex tape and a stunt double had his likeness, that he had his likeness superimposed on it. But I have to wonder if that's the case, because usually an adult, the technology back then really was not there as related to sex tapes. Usually either it was you or not you. So I really look at that, and again, it just showed how desperate Dustin Diamond was for attention, and that was further shown as he escalated his need for attention by making a tell-all book about what happened behind the scenes on the show Saved by the Bell, and talked about all sorts of sordid backstage behavior such as drug use and casual sex, even though these are things that were not talked about on the show as related to these squeaky clean characters. And Dustin Diamond said in his tell-all book that all sorts of stuff was going on. However, he walked it back by saying the book was written by a ghostwriter who interviewed him and compiled the book from his answers. And that really is a kind of weak statement, but the whole thing is that this basically showed how desperate he was to try to get attention, desperate to try to get attention as related to his declining career. But what was really sad is that Dustin Diamond just didn't know how to adapt, because he was not raised to have those male life skills to be able to say, okay, things are basically over as related to this career. But he just continued to look to get attention in the entertainment industry, even though people in the entertainment industry really were not having things for him to do, and there was nothing really there for him to do because all they knew was Screech. So he was trying to do things to show that he was different, but wasn't able to adapt like Mark Paul Gosselaar or Tiffany Amber Thiessen, or even his other co-stars like Elizabeth Berkley, who was so desperate that she starred in the movie Showgirls by Paul Verhoeven, doing nude scenes and sex scenes, desperate to get her career off the Jesse Spano role. And again, Dustin Diamond really didn't know how to set a course for himself, and the course that he was on was a rocky one that was in a state of decline. And he wound up again going from doing porns to tell-all books to winding up on the Celebrity Big Brother in the UK, and was kicked off on day 16 as the fourth roommate to get kicked out, and then even wound up doing a spokesperson for an insurance company. I mean, he was just basically desperate for work at this point, and even wound up taking a job in wrestling. I mean, he basically was just doing anything for any sort of attention, and was just basically struggling to the point where he made an appearance again back in 2001 on the Howard Stern show to basically save his house. I mean, he was in a really bad place, and was in a really bad place as related to his career, and basically was struggling as related to his entire life as later on in his adult life, and struggling through that adult life. I mean, he had a relationship that really didn't work out with his girlfriend, and he had situations that really got bad around 2014, where he wound up getting arrested for stabbing someone in a altercation in a bar, and was found guilty of disorderly conduct, and basically wound up in jail for 4 months. And again, after this conviction, he basically wound up in jail for some time, and again served 3 months and was released on probation. But the whole thing is, he was then rearrested again in 2016 for allegedly violating that parole, and things just got progressively worse for Dustin Diamond as related to his life, because in 2021, even though he was struggling as related to trying to move on with his life, he wound up getting diagnosed with stage 4 cancer of carcinoma of the lungs, even though he wasn't a smoker. And with it being at stage 4, they tried to help him with chemotherapy, but it was just too late. And sadly, Dustin Diamond wound up passing away on February 1st of 2021 at 44 years old. And it was just really sad about everything that happened to Dustin Diamond as related to his life. And after he died, the founder of Insurance King did a tribute to him by racing a NASCAR car with his name on it. and that was the final tribute to Dustin Diamond, who was a boy who grew up was a promising career as a child star, but sadly wound up on the road to becoming a man in crisis. A man in crisis who really got no support or intervention. Even though they did a Saved by the Bell reboot, they basically wrote him off, basically saying his life was just too troubled and too controversial to have him related to the show. And that was a really big blow on Dustin Diamond. I mean, it was the saddest thing to hear, that the way that they did him as related to the show Saved by the Bell, the new reboot one that only lasted 2 seasons. But the whole thing is the way they did Dustin was bad. I mean, Dustin had a rough life as related to things. And again, he wasn't a guy who was known for being on drugs or anything like that as related to his career. No, he was just a guy who wound up getting typecast in a signature role and did not have the ability to be able to adapt or move on because he didn't have male life skills or male survival skills to be able to say, I need to put a period at the end of this Hollywood career. It's not going anywhere. There's nothing else here for me to do. And then sadly, there was nobody. His parents didn't put away any money for him to go to college or to develop another skill. I mean, what's sad is that because Dustin Diamond didn't get support from his parents as a boy, and they were basically had stars in their eyes, they saw him as a boy who basically was going to go on to be an actor, but sadly they didn't help him develop the foundation of support that he needed as he grew into manhood. And sadly, as he didn't have that support as a man, he didn't understand how the world worked for men than it did for women, and that a man has to adapt over time. If something isn't working, he has to put a period at the end of things and move on to something else. That was something Dustin Diamond didn't understand as a boy, and sadly, all of this is what led to Dustin Diamond winding up becoming a man in crisis, whose career ended in a very sad and tragic fashion. Now, this was a video requested by one of my viewers, and if you want to request a video, you can send a donation for a minimum of $15 to the Cash App by clicking the link in the description box, or sending a donation for a minimum of $15 to the PayPal by clicking that link in the description box. Now, if you want to learn more about the struggles of teen sitcom stars and why they have a hard time once they enter into adulthood, you can pick up my book, All About Marilyn, which is now on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. And if you want to learn about why so many men like Dustin Diamond fall through the cracks, you can pick up my book, The Man Crisis, on Amazon.com, and it will explain all of the issues that guys like Dustin Diamond struggle with as related to their life because they didn't get taught male life skills or male survival skills. And this book will show you a blueprint and solution for being able to get your life back on track. And you can get The Man Crisis in paperback and Kindle format on Amazon.com, and you can also find The Man Crisis at other online booksellers like Draft Digital, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, and big box retailers like Walmart and Target. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.
Now available in paperback and e-readers, All About Nikki, a fabulous first season. The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air meets Clueless in this absolutely fabulous African-American 1990s teen sitcom. Get all 13 episodes of All About Nikki, the fabulous first season, in paperback and e-readers today. Now available in paperback and Kindle Unlimited, The Man Crisis. Learn why so many men are struggling to find their way in an increasingly gynocentric world in The Man Crisis. Get your copy of The Man Crisis in paperback and Kindle Unlimited today.
Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.